Mrs. Johnston, back for knowledge and social studies time. Today, we are still in Unit 6, Native Americans, working on Lesson 6, the Lenape, the people of the seasons. Let's discuss what we have already learned. In our previous read aloud about bear, gull, and crow, that you heard about the upright walkers in that story were Native Americans from the Wampanoag tribe. Where did the Wampanoag live? Did you remember that they lived in New England? Maybe you also said Massachusetts or Rhode Island. How did they get their food? That's right. They fished, hunted, grew crops like corn, and dug for clams. What was one of the main foods that they ate? Did you say clams? If you did, clams was right. But what other types of food did they eat? Did you say fish, corn, potatoes, as well as many other foods? If you did, you were right. What was the celebration called that was featured in the story? The celebration was called an ompanog or a clam bake. What kind of houses did the Wampanoag live in? The Wampanoag lived in domed-shaped huts called weetus. Today, you are going to hear about another Native American tribe called the Lenape. What are the names of the two Native American tribes we have already talked about? Did you say Lakota Sioux and Wampanoag? Did you get one or the other? Or did you get both? What is the name of the Native American tribe we are going to learn about today? Lenape. Was Lenape your response? Listen carefully to hear about the Lenape and how they lived. The Lenape people have lived in the eastern woodlands of North America for thousands of years. For most of that time, they lived on the land. They hunted, gathered, and later farmed. Their daily lives were guided by the seasons, and each season brought with it certain changes. Springtime meant that the days were warmer and brighter. Springtime also meant that new life was appearing everywhere. One of the first signs of springtime was the appearance of some flowering plants and trees. This included the black cherry blossoms. You learned the word blossom in Unit 4 when we studied plants. What is a blossom? Blossoms are the flowers on a plant or tree. The sight of the beautiful white blossoms made the Lenape people smile. The blossoms were usually a sign that the last snow had fallen and that the animals would soon shed their winter coats. As the spring sunshine warmed the earth, the Lenape people set to work. They planted their spring crops. The Lenape men and boys prepared the fields for planting. When the fields were ready, the women and girls planted corn, squash, and beans. They also planted herbs, tobacco, and sunflowers. As the Lenape people worked in the fields, the creatures of the land and sky set to work too. Some animals woke up from their winter sleep, others dug burrows, and birds built nests in preparation for their young. A burrow is a hole or tunnel used by animals as a home or a hiding place. The Lenape and the animals and birds worked side by side. With the ice and snow gone, Lenape men and older boys were able to go on longer hunting trips. Usually they hunted on foot. Sometimes they traveled far from their village in their dugout canoes. Their canoes glided smoothly and silently along the rivers of the mid Atlantic. When they returned from their hunting trips, they brought back meat and animal furs with them. The Lenape hunted animals such as bear, deer, elk, and raccoon. They hunted and trapped birds too. Spring slowly turned into summer. The heat from the sun became even stronger. During this time, the Lenape people fished for salmon, herring, and shad. They guarded their ripening crops from the greedy birds. Lenape children gathered berries, collected firewood, and played in the sparkling rivers. As they played, they searched for turtles, basking in the sunshine. In the summer, the Lenape people harvested their corn, beans, and squash. Harvested means that they gathered crops when they were ready to be eaten or used. Corn was one of their most important food crops. It was ground to make cornmeal. It was used to make bread. It was roasted in the fire. Often the kernels were stored for use during the cold days of winter when nothing could grow in the frozen earth. In the autumn, the Lenape harvested their gourds and pumpkins. They gathered nuts, roots, and berries such as huckleberries, raspberries, and strawberries. They made beautiful baskets to store their winter food in. They strengthened their wigwams, or dome shaped houses, and longhouses in preparation for the winter winds and snows that would surely come. Wigwam is the name given to one type of Lenape home. In late autumn, the golden red and orange leaves fell from the trees. The Lenape children rushed to catch them or jump in the gathering piles. Gradually, the leaves blew away, carried by the chilly winds. The days darkened, and winter arrived. During the winter time, the Lenape people spent more time in their warm homes called wigwams. Their wigwams, made from saplings, rushes, bark, and fur, were warm and cozy. Inside the wigwams, the elders told stories of long ago. They told stories about the history of their people. They told stories about the creations of the earth and the Great Spirit. Women and girls stayed busy making clothes and moccasins from animal skins and turkey feathers. The women and girls made pottery jars for cooking and storage too. Men and boys made spears, bows, and arrows. When snow fell from the dark, wintry sky, the Lenape children, just like children everywhere, rushed out to play in it. Even in winter, the men and older boys went off to hunt. They trekked or traveled slowly with difficulty through the deep snow on snowshoes. They followed animal tracks in the snow. If they returned with meat, the women and girls prepared a warm stew or soup. One season followed another, and it has always done. The Lenape lived their lives according to the seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. They listened to the earth's rhythm of life. The world in which they lived provided them with everything they needed. They were guided by the earth's turning and the changing seasons. Such was the way of the Lenape. What is the name of the Native American tribe described in this read aloud? The read aloud describes the Lenape. Where did the Lenape live? They lived in the northeastern woodlands known as New York, New Jersey, and Delaware. What types of food did the Lenape eat? They ate animals such as deer, elk, fish, and crops such as corn, gourds, and pumpkins. What did the Lenape do during the springtime? Did you say that they planted crops and went on hunting trips? What did they do during the summer? Was your response they fished, collected berries and firewood, and harvested the crops at the end of summer? What did they do during the autumn or fall? Did you say they stored their summer harvests and prepared their wigwams for winter winds? What did they do during the winter? Did you remember and say they spent time in their cozy wigwams? They told stories, made clothes, and hunted. Thank you for joining me today on our story about the Lenape, the people of the seasons.